Hi, guys. Hi. You guys are so nice. Okay. Anyways, I don't know about you guys, but I feel personally like time's been passing slower than normal. Like, would you believe me if I told you that it's been almost a month since spring break? I find that kind of absurd. But it's funny because I think we can all agree that there's really two kinds of students during spring break. You have procrastinators and you have liars. Because let's be honest with each other for a second. I don't think anybody was really working first day of spring break. But while I was busy doom scrolling, I couldn't help but notice the amount of inflammatory content all over my feed, ranging from bot comments to buzzword-filled thumbnails to internet gurus. Folks, this kind of content is called ragebait. And since about early 2022, it's pretty much taken over the internet. Now, I really do feel like this is a super important topic to talk about because ragebait is the kind of content that really lives off of the manipulation of its audience. Once we understand how ragebait works, we can fight against it. And this is super important because, as you might imagine, being constantly exposed to anger-inducing content isn't good for your own mental health. So, let's start off with the basics. What is ragebait? To answer this question, let's talk about the internet for a second. How does the internet work? Well, you see it a lot with TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, stuff like that, where the degree of success that your post receives is directly proportional to the amount of interaction it gets. Well, you see it all the time, in YouTube comments, where people will say, oh, the YouTube algorithm has blessed this video. What does that mean? Well, in essence, a bunch of people saw the video, they enjoyed it, so they liked and commented. YouTube's algorithm takes note of this, and they say, hey, this must be a pretty good video. Let's boost it up and recommend it to more people. And that ends up netting more success for the original poster of the content. Now, what ragebaiters do is they'll take this logic and they'll say, okay, so more interaction means more success. But what about negative interaction? And that's exactly what they do. So they'll post something and it's really designed from the ground up to be as provoking as possible, as anger-inducing as possible. And when people see this content, and naturally they get super upset, that ends up netting more success for the poster themselves because YouTube doesn't know the difference between positive and negative interaction. All they see is more people are commenting and interacting with it. So they'll say, okay, this must be pretty good. And there you go, success for the ragebaiter. But what's interesting to note is that ragebait really isn't, or more specifically, emotional manipulation isn't really specific to content creation. Actually, I'd say that politics is a pretty common place where emotional manipulation is ripe. Just take a look at the quotes over here. All of them are pretty emotionally charged. One little side note, by the way, notice how there's always somebody to blame in these quotes. There's always somebody to be angry at. Anger is no good unless it's directed towards somebody. And in the case of ragebaiters, this somebody becomes themselves. But we could take this even further. So I'm sure we're all thinking of scenarios right now where we've experienced some kind of emotional manipulation, at school, at work, in relationships, things like that. So the point I'm trying to make here is that emotional manipulation is something that works almost everywhere. And that leads us to our next question. How does ragebait work? And I assure you, this is a much easier question to ask than it is to answer. As such, I thought I would call upon one of the most notorious ragebaiters of our time, Andrew Tate. Yeah. Well, quick little disclaimer, before we get started, if you love Andrew Tate, that's fine. If you hate Andrew Tate, that's fine. One thing that we're going to learn about in this talk is this double image of Tate that he has online is totally by his own choice. So I assure you I will be as unbiased as I can during my talk. So let's get started. Now, Tate is known online for a lot of things. Some people know him for his polarizing takes and legal trouble, while other people see him as a kind of hero who saved them from monetary struggles. One of the big points of contention with Tate have been the Hustlers University courses that he offers, which are advertised as allowing, the average Joe like you or me to reach the same financial status as Tate himself. There's a lot of differing opinions about the courses online. Some people claim that these courses are genuinely helpful, while other people do have valid criticisms. For example, a lot of people say that the information found in these courses can easily be found online for free. As well, these courses are conducted through Discord for the hefty price of $50 per month. Now, this raises a natural question. Now, in order for people to invest in courses like these for such a steep price, there really does have to be a deep level of trust in Andrew Tate. Well, that's the same Andrew Tate who just got himself in a bunch of legal trouble. So we have to ask ourselves the logical question. How did Andrew Tate possibly manage to win over the trust of so many people? And like pretty much all things Andrew Tate, this is a really complicated question. So we'll dive into things one by one. But in summary, Tate really knows how to play his online persona well. So how does he do that? Well, one of the things he does, and I think the most obvious thing that he does, is stir up drama. So he'll go on Twitter and X, and he'll look for someone who might give him a reaction. The person behind me is Greta Thunberg. She's a climate change activist. So Tate will go up to Greta Thunberg and he'll say, "Hey, Greta Thunberg, I'm Andrew Tate. I have a bunch of Bugattis and they emit tons of CO2. Don't you just hate me?" And theoretically, when Tate responds and replies, when Greta Thunberg responds and replies, people are going to get upset and take her side. But it doesn't matter because people are going to talk about Tate, and Tate's going to be a topic of contention online. Now, this is all pretty simple stuff, but the next thing he does is really interesting, where he'll divide the internet against itself. So, same thing as before, Tate will try and upset the greatest amount of people he possibly can. Here's the most egregious example I could find. So here, Andrew Tate doesn't like black people, white people, straight people, gay people, men and women. I think it's safe to say that is a significant amount of the human populace. So now when people are really mad at Tate and angry, here's when he changes personalities. And he suddenly becomes Mr. Agreeable Tate. Take a look at this quote over here. Who doesn't love self-improvement? So now, partially due to the fact that we don't really do our research anymore, there's two camps. You have camp, I hate Andrew Tate, and you have camp, I think Andrew Tate is pretty agreeable. And when camp, I hate Andrew Tate, goes and starts complaining about Andrew Tate, camp, I think he's agreeable, is going to snap back and say, hey, that's not fair. I think he's a pretty agreeable guy. And when these two sides clash, obviously people are going to look up who Andrew Tate is, and when they do that, Andrew Tate becomes popular online again. It's kind of an ingenious system. Now, some of the other things he does is manipulate his audience. So behind me, this is a YouTube video by CoffeeZilla. Great guy, this is where I got most of my information from. But he talks about how Tate kind of manipulates his audience. I think a lot of us have seen that advertisement of Tate online with his Bugattis, talking about, hey, you're not as rich as me, but you could be if you join my courses. And when people fall for the bait and they actually sign up for these courses, what if the main money-making methods that Tate suggests is just posting TikToks of himself online? I think it's pretty obvious that one person is maybe earning a little more than the other. Here's a fun little game you could play. Go onto TikTok, create a brand new account, and just keep scrolling until you find a video of Andrew Tate. You would be surprised at how many posts there are of him on there. And last but not least, honestly, he does kind of dress in a way that makes him hard to forget. So, whether you love him or you hate him, Andrew Tate really knows how to keep profiteering off of both his fans and his haters. Which leads us to our last question. How do you fight it? How do you fight rage bait? Well, I think it goes without saying that this is the most important part of this talk. Now, the first reference of rage bait has been cited about early 2022, but it begs a natural question of how is this technique doing now? And although it's a little hard to maybe quantify, I definitely say maybe it's not doing that well. Here's one of the common bot comments I was talking about before. Notice how we went from about 2,000 views, give or take, to 536 views, give or take. That's about a 75% decrease, and that's a lot. The point I'm trying to make here is that to stay relevant, content creators, or more specifically rage baiters, are having to do bolder and bolder things to stay relevant. Like Tate himself, who earned himself a bit of legal trouble a while back. I think many of us have heard this story. Apparently Tate got himself arrested over a pizza box, and while the source itself isn't maybe that credible, what's important to know is that Tate really built himself up off of calling people out. And all of a sudden, that's led to his own downfall. Another guy, you probably haven't heard of him. His name is Johnny Somali. And what he does is he'll go into foreign countries and just make an absolute nuisance of himself. Well, Somali just earned himself about 10 years minimum prison sentence in South Korea, in a country where people are already pretty upset with him. So, what's the point here? What am I trying to say? Well, rage bait really doesn't have a lasting audience. The thing you need to understand about the kinds of people that enjoy rage bait is that they're fundamentally just bullies. They're just bullies watching somebody they want to make fun of. And when a bully doesn't have enough content to make fun of, the bully's just gonna disappear. So in that, we get the answer to our ever important question. How do you fight rage bait? Well, you simply ignore it. And I know what you're thinking, duh, go figure. But I think a lot of us understand this, a lot of us know what the statement is, but maybe don't act upon it in the way that we're supposed to. Not interacting with rage baiters means not leaving a dislike, not leaving a hate comment, not harassing a viewer, because you should never do that. It means not even clicking on the content in the first place. Maybe it just means blocking them. Because the only thing a rage bait needs to keep going is an audience. And if you deny them even that, then there's nothing to allow them to keep powering ahead. So to conclude, I think we've established now that rage bait definitely is easy money. However, all shortcuts do come at a price. It's important to not let our emotions control us, but also not the emotions of other people too. If you see people falling down the rage bait rabbit hole, it doesn't hurt to go up to them and say, hey, maybe this isn't really worth it. Because in that way, you deny the rage baiter both your time and the time of another potential audience member. So, to finish things off, rage bait is all about people banding together through hatred. But we have to ask ourselves the question, why can't we do the same thing to fight it? Thank you.